everybody. I'm here to recap Days of Our Lives for the week of August 18th through the 22nd. The things that happened this week happened in various stages, so let's start at the beginning. Eve enlists Teresa to persuade Paige to maybe go to Stanford and get away from JJ by telling him all this stuff about how much they partied and how it's kind of like reverse psychology. If Teresa really likes it, then it's probably bad and maybe she shouldn't be with JJ. However, Paige is a Stanford girl and she sees right through that, and she calls her mom out on it. And Eve just keeps insisting that, she had nothing to do with it. But that's not even the biggest thing that happened with Eve this week. Maggie and Victor offered they offered Eve a settlement, which she actually signed. Jennifer is graciously accepting Maggie and Victor's money in order to pay Eve off so that she drops the lawsuit. Basically, the terms of it is that Eve cannot talk about the film or the book or Jack at all, but she gets Maggie and Victor's money. And Eve is so mad. Apparently the lawyer thought that she didn't have a case, so he encouraged her to settle for this deal. And Eve wanted so much more. She wanted more money. She wanted the film to be more popular. She wanted more money from that. And she's just really upset. She screams, "Jennifer Horton, you bitch!" It's great. But Paige is totally fine with it. She's so excited that this is finally over. She's spending a lot of time with JJ. They keep falling farther in love, despite Mary Beth trashing JJ every chance that she gets, but this just offers an opportunity for Paige to defend him. The other big thing that happened this week was Kristen's trial. Nicole got in there somehow and roughed her up a bit. Didn't really faze Kristen, as she pointed out that what Nicole did was just as bad, perhaps even worse. Daniel's still not giving Nicole a time of day. He's mad that, Eric, who doesn't hate anybody, hates Nicole. And speaking of Eric, he passed Kristen on his way in to testify, and that's when she insisted on being in to hear his testimony. She didn't respond to what he said, she just listened. But later, she addresses the court to plead for bail, because her case will be going to trial. However, she is on an ankle monitor and is able to wander around Salem. So thank you, Stefano, for paying off that judge, and thank you, Melinda Trask, for returning after last year in Sammy's trial, for coming back to try to put Kristen away. Will's article comes out this week. Earlier in the week, Sammy and Kate, in their pajamas no less, are on the phone doing damage control with the board. Sammy thinks it's a good idea to send the kids to summer camp, and she has a lovely conversation with EJ shirtless. So Kate goes over to Will's, and she's talking to him. She's making him feel very guilty. Perhaps she was trying to get him to rescind his article, but her words definitely had an impact, because what she was saying was that I'm really sad that you turned out just like me and just like your mother. EJ later also says something to this effect in a more vulgar manner once the article actually is published online. And he yells at Will, starts talking about how much his parents have sacrificed for him, how his dad went to jail for him, how much Sammy has, sacrificed in trying to keep him out of jail. He says he's disgusted with what Will did. And it's actually kind of true because, he's a writer, but he's not a journalist, and journalists have a code of ethics that when you report or when you're interviewing somebody, you have to let them know that it's on the record. That's a big no-no. You cannot be dishonest with your sources. That just doesn't happen. But of course, this is a soap, and we don't pay attention to those kind of rules. So unless EJ and Sammy plan to file something against him, it's probably just going to end at EJ's pestering. Will keeps trying to defend himself, saying that, "Hey, I didn't put Abigail's name in it. I think my mom did that." Of course, there is no evidence to support this, however, we can kind of put two and two together, and Will and Sunny have also. Will keeps defending himself, saying that he needed to stand up to Sammy, and even when he was talking to Marlena, he says it's because you never did. In the midst of all this drama, he's actually having some little problems with Sunny. He ends up apologizing for it afterwards, but Sunny sees the article and sees Abigail's name in it and immediately assumes that this is the changes that Will did and this is how far Will is willing to go. And honestly, with the stuff that Will's been saying, you can't really blame Sunny for suspecting him. However, they are husbands and they love each other and they make up by the end of the episode. However, next week there's a spoiler that Will is going to find out about Sunny's deceptions and his lying in order to get Will the job, which might not be so well for our Wilson boys. But Will's really excited about his article. I mean, it's a cover story, and when you're a writer, that's a huge deal. To get a cover story on the first thing that's ever been formally, officially published, that's awesome. And he's like really excited. He wants to bring the bread home. He says to Sunny, I am gonna help out with bills and rent and all that stuff. So aside from this being totally devastating for everybody involved, at least we get the bills paid. Abigail is getting stalked left and right because of the scandal that was released in True Vista. Ben comes over to the house to help her, comfort her, make her feel better. They have that lovely scene on the park bench that is becoming their bench. Abigail and her mother decide to do a press release. I don't know exactly how they could spin it to make it sound positive or in Abigail's favor, but apparently it did because they're already getting positive responses. Another person who comes to the Horton house is Daniel, of course. One great thing about Daniel and Jennifer is that, they're not really talking to each other, but they love each other's kids. So Daniel gets rid of some reporters who have been standing out on the curb all day, and he says, wow, Jennifer, you're so good at your job. But of course, keeping it platonic, because Daniel and Jennifer clearly don't know how to work in a relationship. Abigail repeats to EJ that what happened at the cabin was her decision and that she knew what she was doing, and she doesn't need his help or sympathy when he says that perhaps it's better if people read it as that he is the aggressor. And of course, Will did not have time to tell Abigail anything the beginning of this week because he made a phone call to her and she just kept saying, oh my gosh, Will, that's so fantastic, you're a writer, oh my gosh. And then, of course, my mom's on the other line about the lawsuit, and then, oops, didn't tell ya. So when Abigail knocks on Will's door, well, we'll see what happens next week. Sunny also goes over to the mansion to yell at Sammy for, going behind Will's back. He doesn't really have a case because he himself says, wow, this was a huge mistake. And Sammy is, taking all these points like, Abigail's in the wrong also, and Will went behind my back. She has this great line where she says, Kate wouldn't have talked to any reporter like she opened up to Will. He had that knife because we gave it to him and then he stabbed us in the back with it. So Will and his mom are clearly going to be on the outs because they're still reeling from the fallout. Sammy is in very deep doo-doo because the board members are calling her. They are very upset and they want to talk to EJ. They want to know that everything's okay. And Sammy admits to EJ that, hey, I need your help. We know that Sammy's in a bad place because she's actually drinking some scotch or whiskey, whatever is in that. When she's drinking from EJ's glass, you know that Sammy is in need of his help. Spoilers for next week, there could be a possible reconciliation in the works, and also Abigail's going to confront Sammy next week with a deal of some sort. Lucas comes back from a business trip, hopefully to help his son out with all this nonsense. First and foremost, he talks to Jordan. He hears about what his mom did, yells at her, and then tries to boost up Rafe's confidence. Clyde is blackmailing Kate for business contacts, so you give me dirty guys and I will not tell Rafe about you finding me, and I will not tell Jordan about you finding me. Earlier on in the week also, Hope found out that Aiden had misled her about dating Jen. He specifically chose words and manipulated the conversation so that it sounded like he had been dating Jen. Of course, Hope talks to Jen, obviously, they're cousins, and she realizes that he did do that. And he admits it, and he admits that he did this on purpose because he does not want a relationship. They're kind of being like little teenagers about it, really, because she's saying that, I think you got the wrong idea. And he's like, no, I think you got the wrong idea. I was just trying to let you down easy. Teresa's actually being very comforting to Brady, not trying to add to his suffering, and boy is he suffering because he's got Kristen back in Salem who he hasn't seen yet. He's got a doctor, a coma specialist, who won't see his father. His father's going into long-term care, the annulment's coming in, the papers are in Nevada, everything is so crazy, he's so stressed out, he goes for a run, and he runs into Kristen at the park. Another spoiler news, Molly Burnett is confirmed to be back filming on Days as Melanie Jonas. Also, Billy Flynn was cast as the new Chad, as a replacement for Casey Diedrich, who left sometime last year. Both of them are going to be in Salem, so Chelany might be reuniting, but that's far, far in the future. As for me, I'm looking to see what happens with Will and Abigail, and Sammy and EJ, and Kristen and Brady, and Eric and Nicole, and Eve next week on Days of Our Lives. See ya!